Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are looking at a really fascinating and often totally misunderstood idea about human history: why ancient human brains were actually bigger than ours. To get started, I want you to just set the scene in your mind. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors lived in a much, much harsher world. It was raw, unforgiving, and completely relentless. The environment they had to navigate every single day required a type of physical and mental endurance that is, honestly, almost unimaginable to us sitting in our comfortable modern lives. Today, we're going to correct the record on this whole brain size mystery using the facts of evolution, energy use, and the dramatic ways human lifestyles have changed over the millennia. We're talking roughly 20,000 to 30,000 years ago here. Back in this era, every single day was just a massive, exhausting challenge. Finding food wasn't just a quick trip down the street to the grocery store, right? It was a grueling, high-stakes hunt or a desperate search where even one mistake could mean starvation. And avoiding predators? That was a constant, terrifying reality. You couldn't just lock your front door at night. You pretty much had to sleep with one eye open. Surviving extreme weather without any modern comforts meant you had to be remarkably resilient. Every single day required making immediate, snap decisions that could quite literally mean life or death for you and your family. Now, what's really interesting about this physical comparison is the surprising paradox it reveals. When we look at the historical data, the brains of some ancient humans were actually slightly larger than the average modern human brain is today. Over the last 20,000 to 30,000 years, average human brain size has genuinely decreased somewhat. It's one of those biological facts that catches a lot of people off guard. We all naturally kind of assume that as we progressed as a species, as we invented wheels, built cities, and split the atom, our brains must have just kept getting bigger and bigger to hold all that new genius. Which brings us to the core mystery we are answering today. Why did our brains get smaller? For a really long time, scientists falsely believed that bigger brains always meant greater intelligence. And honestly, it's a completely understandable assumption to make. If we're out here building complex civilizations, rocketing into space, and curing diseases, surely the physical engine driving all of that innovation must be expanding, right? Well, it turns out that assumption completely misses the reality of how our biology actually works in the wild. Okay, let's dive into this. To truly solve this mystery, we have to look closely at evolution. See, evolution is not as simple as just continuously building a bigger, more powerful brain forever. It's not like upgrading a computer's hard drive year after year. Evolution is a highly complex process, and it is fundamentally focused on survival and, crucially, efficiency. It doesn't just reward sheer physical size. What it heavily rewards is the absolute optimal use of resources for whatever specific environment you happen to be living in at the time. The biological reality is that the human brain is one of the most wildly expensive organs in your entire body. It commands a massive 20% of our daily energy, despite only making up a tiny fraction of our body weight. It's a huge energy hog. Even when you're just sitting perfectly still on the couch staring at the ceiling, maintaining a large brain requires a massive amount of calories. Carrying around all that heavy, energy-hungry computing power is a huge biological tax. Let's be real here. Feeding a giant, exhausted brain every single day in a harsh world where food is scarce means every single calorie matters. If you don't use your energy efficiently, you just don't survive. But as we know, human history didn't stay frozen in time. As humans fundamentally changed their way of life, the intense evolutionary demands placed on our brains shifted right along with them. The climate began to warm as the last ice age retreated, opening up massive new territories. As our ancestors migrated and their daily habits began to adapt, the very requirements for our biological survival transformed. We stopped relying solely on raw, independent survival instinct, and we started leaning into something entirely new. Think back to those ancient times we just discussed. Early humans depended heavily on extremely powerful, individual survival skills. They were essentially operating as isolated walking supercomputers. A single person needed to vividly remember vast, changing landscapes without a map. They had to perfectly track elusive animals over miles of difficult terrain, precisely recognize safe versus poisonous plants on site, predict dangerous weather patterns before they hit, and constantly solve immediate life-threatening problems. They carried the absolute entire burden of human survival right there, in their own individual heads. And keeping up that level of constant mental processing, absolutely exhausting. And this brilliantly illustrates the incredible turning point for our species. Later on, humans created something unbelievably powerful, a tool that completely shifted the evolutionary landscape forever: cooperation. We stopped trying to survive entirely on our own as isolated individuals, constantly dodging predators before breakfast, and we finally started leaning on each other. As societies became larger, people began actively sharing their knowledge. Instead of every single person needing to know absolutely everything about survival, from making a fire to setting a snare to finding clean water, that massive volume of information could finally be distributed. It was stored first within tight-knit communities, passed down through rich spoken traditions around the fire, and eventually, centuries later, permanently recorded in books. The heavy lifting of storing all that critical data was suddenly outsourced, moving from the individual brain out to the collective group. And right alongside this shared knowledge came a massive, unprecedented boom in survival technology. The invention of specialized tools meant we could build things faster. The development of agriculture meant we didn't have to risk our lives chasing down our food every single day. We could literally just grow it in our own backyards. The building of sturdy shelters kept harsh weather out. The creation of early medicine healed wounds that would have previously been a death sentence. And the structuring of complex social systems kept us remarkably safe in numbers. The environment was no longer quite as harsh simply because we were actively reshaping it to protect ourselves. So the crucial point is that over thousands of years, because the daily demands of individual survival severely lessened, natural selection began to favor a slightly smaller, much more energy-efficient brain. We simply didn't need that massive, calorie-burning biological hard drive operating at maximum capacity in every single individual's head anymore. The selective pressure to maintain a huge brain dropped, largely because we had successfully built an environment and a society that effectively shared all that heavy cognitive load. I really want to emphasize this core point directly to you. The fact that average human brain size has decreased somewhat over the last 20 to 30,000 years does absolutely not mean modern humans are less intelligent. Evolution didn't make us worse. It made us more efficient. We need to completely detach that old, outdated idea of physical brain volume from the concept of human capability and true intelligence. Think about it. Modern humans have enthusiastically used these slightly smaller, highly efficient brains to accomplish the unimaginable. We've created unprecedentedly complex languages, engineered incredibly powerful computers that fit right in our pockets, developed life-saving modern medicines, and built sprawling, interconnected civilizations unlike absolutely anything ever seen before in the entire history of the planet. Clearly, a slight physical reduction in brain size has not slowed down our progress or our ingenuity as a species in the slightest. Because ultimately our true intelligence comes not merely from the physical size of our brains, but from how those brains are organized and how we actually use them. It's really not just about the raw hardware taking up space in our skulls. It's about the software. It's the intricate wiring, the complex folds, and the incredible efficiency of the billions of synaptic connections firing off within. Organization always beats pure size. Evolution simply changed the way intelligence works on this planet. Our ancestors survived the brutally harsh ancient world with incredibly powerful individual brains. Modern humans, however, survive with something entirely different, but equally powerful: millions of connected minds working seamlessly together. We effectively traded our raw, isolated brain mass for an interconnected, globe-spanning web of shared human knowledge. Which brings us to a final fascinating question to leave you with today. If our individual brains physically shrank because we began permanently storing our knowledge in each other, in our sprawling libraries, and in our complex communities, is human society actually just one giant brain? It's an incredible way to think about how evolution has shaped not just our biology, but our entire modern world. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.